Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. Growing up, my younger sister, Ellie, now 29 female, was always the golden child. From the moment she was born, she was treated like a princess. My parents doted on her in ways they never did for me. When Ellie wanted dance lessons, they paid for the best studio in town. When I wanted piano lessons, I got a keyboard from a garage sale and a cheap online tutorial. Family vacations were planned around Ellie's preferences. If I ever voiced dissatisfaction, I was told to stop being jealous and to understand that Ellie was special. Despite this, I've always tried to maintain a good relationship with Ellie. She was my sister, and I loved her despite the favoritism. But even my patience had limits, and those limits were tested when my parents began to meddle in my marriage. I married my now ex-husband, Jake, when I was 28. For the first few years of our marriage, everything seemed fine. But when we started trying for kids, we ran into issues. After a year of trying, we sought medical advice and discovered that I had a condition that made it difficult for me to conceive. The doctor didn't say it was impossible, just that it would take time and potentially medical intervention. Jake seemed understanding at first, but that didn't last. My parents, who had always been too involved in my life, found out about our struggles. Instead of offering support, they started making snide comments. My mom would say things like, "A man like Jake deserves to be a father. You will see he will leave you for someone who can give him kids." And my dad chimed in with, "It's a shame Ellie isn't the one married to him. They'd already have a house full of kids by now." At first, I thought they were just being their usual awful selves. But then Ellie started spending more time with Jake. She claimed she needed his help with her job search because he worked in HR and had experience with resumes and interviews. I didn't think much of it at first. Jake seemed eager to help her, and I trusted them both, even though I was starting to feel uncomfortable with how frequently Ellie was reaching out to him. One day, Jake came home and said we needed to talk. He confessed that my parents had been pressuring him to leave me. They told him that I was defective and that he'd be wasting his life waiting for a miracle. But the real kicker? They suggested he marry Ellie instead. "She's young and fertile," they said. "She'll give you as many kids as you want." I was horrified. I begged Jake to tell them to back off, but he just sat there, avoiding my eyes. And then he dropped the bombshell. He had feelings for Ellie, my own sister. I can't even describe the pain I felt. I filed for divorce immediately, but it felt like everyone turned against me. Jake moved out and started dating Ellie officially within weeks of our separation. My parents cheered them on like they were Romeo and Juliet. Meanwhile, I was left there alone, humiliated and hurt. They told me I'm bitter, and I need to let people be happy if I can't give them what they need myself. For the next 5 years, I went no contact with all of them. I threw myself into my career, went to therapy, and to my surprise, met someone new, Daniel. He was a single dad with a son from a previous marriage, and he showed me what real love and partnership looked like. 2 years into our relationship, I got pregnant. Twice. Against all odds, I had 2 beautiful children, a boy and a girl. My little family healed wounds I thought would never close. The journey to motherhood was not easy. During my first pregnancy, I was riddled with anxiety. The words my parents and Jake had said about me being defective haunted me. I worried constantly about losing my pregnancy, whether I would be a good mother, whether I could provide a stable and loving environment for my children. Daniel was my rock through it all. He held my hand at every doctor's appointment, stayed up late painting the nursery, and reminded me daily that I was stronger than I thought. When our first child, Liam, was born, I cried more than I ever had in my life. Holding him in my arms felt like reclaiming a part of myself that had been stolen. 2 years later, we welcomed Emma, and our family felt complete. My bond with Daniel's son, Caleb, also grew stronger. He calls me Mom now, and seeing all 3 kids together fills me with a joy I never thought I'd experience. Last week, I ran into my parents at the mall. I was with my kids, who are now 3 and 1, and Daniel's son. My mom's eyes lit up when she saw the kids. She immediately came over, gushing about how adorable they were. My dad followed, awkwardly trying to strike up a conversation. At first, I was too stunned to speak, but then my mom said something that made my blood boil. "It's been so long. We've missed you. And look at these little angels. It's about time we got to be grandparents." I laughed in her face. "Grandparents? Go ask Ellie for grandkids." The color drained from their faces. My mom stammered something about how Ellie and Jake have been trying, but haven't had any luck. Apparently, they've been to fertility specialists, but no one can figure out why they can't conceive. My dad chimed in saying, "We were wrong, okay? Forgiveness is the best form of love," he said. "It takes a strong person to say sorry, and even stronger person to forgive." That was it for me. I told them that there are things that are not possible to forgive, that they don't deserve to be in my kid's life, and that they made their bed, and now they could lie in it. I reminded them that they called me defective, encouraged my husband to leave me, and celebrated when my sister and husband betrayed me. They had no right to demand anything from me now. I picked up my kids and walked away, leaving them standing there, looking like they'd just been slapped. Later, Ellie called me. She cried, accusing me of being cruel to our parents. She said I was punishing them for mistakes they made years ago, and that I was being selfish for denying them a relationship with their grandkids. She said Dad just suffered a massive heart attack, and it's all my fault because of the way I spoke to him and my mother. I told her that she and Jake had 5 years to give them grandkids, and it wasn't my problem they couldn't. I also reminded her that she'd chosen to betray me for her own happiness, and while I feel sorry for Dad's health, but it's not my fault he had a heart attack. Now, I'm wondering if I went too far. Reddit. Am I the a-hole for keeping my parents out of my children's life and for the way I spoke to them? OP's parents and sister made their choices, and now they're facing the consequences. It's rich of them to suddenly want to play grandparents after everything they put OP through. OP is not punishing anyone. OP is protecting her kids from the same toxicity that hurt her so deeply. The fact that Ellie and Jake can't conceive isn't OP's problem, and OP's parents don't get a free pass just because time has passed. OP has built a beautiful family. She needs to focus on them and keep the negativity out. OP was rewarded after all the pain her closest people put her through. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. Your parents encouraged your husband to leave you for your sister, called you defective, and celebrated your pain. Now they want to sweep all that under the rug and play happy families? Absolutely not. They're not entitled to your forgiveness or your kids. You're teaching your children a valuable lesson about boundaries and self-respect. Stand your ground. You owe them nothing. Not the a-hole. Let's not forget about how your parents openly disrespected you, destroyed your marriage, and prioritized Ellie over you your entire life. Now that Ellie and Jake can't give them grandkids, they suddenly see the value in your family? Nope. They don't deserve a relationship with you or your children. Don't let guilt manipulate you into letting them back in. They've shown who they really are, and you've every right to protect your peace. Not the a-hole. Your parents and sister betrayed you in the worst way possible, and now they're upset that you won't let them back into your life. Actions have consequences. It's not your fault your dad had a heart attack. It's a result of his own stress and choices. Don't let Ellie guilt trip you. You've built a loving, healthy family, and your parents don't deserve to be a part of it after everything they've done. My now husband and I got married 1.5 months ago. We had 6 people on each side of the bridal party. This wedding took 3 full years to plan and prepare for. When I got engaged, most of the bridesmaids were very single, including Anna, the star of this story. 2 of them were in long-term relationships. I wanted to just give the 2 partnered bridesmaids +1s. Anna seemed offended by this, because my wedding was then years off, and she was actually dating her now husband at the time, though it was casual. I eventually got pushed by my mother to give them all +1s. Anna actually continued to date that guy and married him 4 months before my wedding at 2 months pregnant. She brought her new husband as her +1, who I never met prior, and convinced one of the other bridesmaids to take her friend as hers, when she knew we didn't like him. She was hugely pregnant and didn't refrain from showing it off. We're both fairly young, 25, and in my husband's culture, getting pregnant before late 20s, 30s, married or not, is basically a teenage pregnancy and drew attention. She also has a vibrant personality and has a way of eclipsing everyone around her. Her husband is also very tall and incredibly attractive, which drew a lot of attention. All anyone spoke about or of was Anna's pregnancy and her attractive husband. Even in the line, people were asking about that electric woman and of her pregnancy, marriage, life. When they got up to dance, all eyes were on them. Anna's friend ended up hooking up with my brother, outing him as gay and causing a huge scandal. I ended up leaving midway through the reception in tears and never attended the next morning's brunch. Anna and her entourage left early the next morning and also didn't attend. I can't even look at the pictures without crying and desperately want a do-over. I'm not a bridezilla, but this was beyond the pale. It felt like a celebration of Anna's marriage. I'm sorry, but I put so much planning, effort, and money into this, while someone that got pregnant without a thought and married spur of the moment reaped the benefits. I honestly feel like Anna owes me a wedding and did all of this as revenge for me offending her years ago. Am I wrong? You're the a-hole. What the actual duck? The only thing wrong your friend did was convince the other bridesmaid to invite her friend. But being angry at a bridesmaid for being pregnant is a very bridezilla thing to do, and I can't understand how self-centered you have to be to not even realize that. You're the a-hole. I read the entire thing twice, and I can't figure out what Anna allegedly did wrong. Just because you spent 3 years and a presumably absurd amount of money on your wedding doesn't mean you get to control aspects of your friends' lives, such as who they date, who their other friends are, how charismatic and attractive they are, or when they get pregnant. You're the a-hole. Are you actually serious? You can't selectively give +1s to your bridal party. Well, you can, but it's an a-hole move. You think she got pregnant to ruin your wedding, and you're bitter she married a tall, attractive man? Wow, that's just... And it's not her fault that the other +1 hooked up with your brother. That situation sucks, but isn't her problem. About 4 years ago, I received a notification on a genealogy site that I had a close match to someone. It was discovered quite quickly that that person was a first cousin, and we share 15% DNA. Until this time, I grew up believing I only had 2 cousins from my mom's side only. This genealogical match was on my dad's side and is my uncle's daughter. I immediately contacted my parents to give them the news. They were shocked and surprised. After all, I was always the oldest child of my paternal grandparents, until now. My grandparents are both deceased, so we have no way of knowing if they knew. I'm in my mid-40s for reference, and my newfound cousin is about 3 years older. This is where the situation troubles me. My uncle is never married and lives as a recluse in another city about 2-hour flight away. We haven't visited him for 20 years. Yet my family talks to him at birthdays, Christmas, etc. I exchanged a card with him over the holidays. Due to my grandparents being penny pinchers and investors all their lives, they left my uncle with a $500,000 mortgage-free home and about another $500,000 in cash. He collects a pension and is in his 70s. My dad thinks that if I call up my uncle and say, "So I found out you have a daughter," he will change any will he may have, and my sibling and I will receive nothing, where his daughter, whom he has not known for 40+ years, will receive everything. For the record, we have no idea about the details of his will. My parents are just straight out guessing here. As for my cousin, she was told by her bio mom that my uncle was a mailman, which he was, and he got her pregnant as she was a customer on his route. My cousin thinks that my uncle knows that she was born, but is not 100% sure. She was given up for adoption at birth and speaks sparingly to her bio mom. Because she has basic info correct about my uncle, I confirm for her which city he lives in. She could contact him on her own, but she hasn't. She has said she wants nothing from him other than to know about family medical history, which I provided as best I could. I'm of the opinion that if she wanted to connect with him, she would. My parents don't want me to stir the pot, so to speak, and get them connected. But some part of me thinks that he should at least know she is out there, and if in the end he wants to give her everything without even knowing much, that's up to him. So, am I the a-hole here for keeping this a secret from him, at the request of my parents? Everyone sucks here, apart from your uncle and his daughter. Vultures waiting for the man to die in order to tear apart his estate, instead of giving him the chance to find a child he might not know about. Oh my God. A-hole doesn't even adequately convey just how awful I think this is. He has a right to know, and if he already knows, your inheritance might not be such a done deal after all. God, this is awful, and you don't even have a real relationship with him apart from holiday cards. I hope he leaves it all to a dog shelter. You're the a-hole. Also, you said this happened 4 years ago? You've done nothing since then? I find it really disturbing that the conversation is about whether your uncle would change his will, and not how he would emotionally react to finding out he has a biological child. This is your dad's brother and newly discovered niece. Because of that, I would say your parents are the a-holes, and if you are on board with their logic, then everyone sucks here. I think given she's not currently keen on outside relationships, you're technically not the a-hole, but see above. At the very least, it's your responsibility to provide her with his contact information, and she can decide how to proceed. Background: I am 25 female. My fiance James is 25 male. We have 4 children between us and have been together for 5 years. Tyler, 10 male, Mia, 7 female, and Charlie, 4 male, and Leela, 1 female. Tyler is my fiance's biological son. Mia is my biological daughter, and we are both Charlie's and Leela's parents. James has not seen Tyler since he was 1 year old. His ex-partner, Bella, 28, doesn't allow him to have access to Tyler, although we have tried. Tyler is under the impression that Bella's partner, Logan, 28, is his biological father, and Bella has no intentions of telling him otherwise. James is not on his birth certificate, as Bella didn't want to be charged with being with a minor. I am in contact with Bella and receive updates of Tyler 4 to 5 times a year, but that's as much contact as we have to do with Tyler. Story: I'm about to come into some money, around $250,000 through compensation for a traumatic event. It should be in my bank by the end of the month. Due to this, I asked James to sit down with me and allocate the funds so we don't blow it. Immediately, I separated $100,000 out of the budget to go into a high-interest account for Mia, Leela, and Charlie that they can access at 23. I showed James this, and he asked why Tyler's name wasn't included. I told him that he had told me from the start that he said I could do what I wanted with the money, and it belonged to me, and I was allocating it so our children could be taken care of in the future, and to try and create generational wealth. I also told him that if Tyler was actually in our life, I would include him, but he isn't despite our efforts, and I wasn't comfortable putting money away for a kid and taking from our children when I didn't know Tyler at all. I told him the only money I would allocate to Tyler was money to go to court and establish paternity and be able to have access to him, but that was as far as I was willing to go. James called me selfish and said that Bella has made his life hard enough cutting him out of Tyler's life, and pretending her affair partner, who was his best friend, is Tyler's real dad, and he at least thought I would understand that he doesn't want to ruin Tyler's life by telling him his whole life is a lie. And surprise, I'm your dad you haven't seen in 9 years, and he thought I would have at least put money aside for him, so when he learns the truth one day, that James can reach out to him and be given something from him also. I told him that wasn't my responsibility, and Tyler is literally not struggling for anything when Logan makes $350K a year, and he has opportunities our children could only dream of. James told me he couldn't believe me and is now sleeping in the spare room and hasn't spoken to me since. Am I really being an a-hole? No. James's feelings on this are obviously complicated, but the reality is that Tyler is not his son, legally or practically. He has no visitation, no custody rights, nothing. Why would you set money aside for a child whose life would be ruined, as James says, if he knew the truth? And how will this work? One day Tyler learns that a complete stranger, you, has money for him, which he doesn't really need. You are the wife, fiancé of his dad's former best friend. That's not weird? The money would make a bigger difference in the lives of your other 3 children than it would in Tyler's life. That's the cold reality. If James is suddenly so interested in Tyler, he needs to go to court and get some kind of access to him. Otherwise, I'd really question James's motives here. You are not the a-hole. My feelings are truthfully very conflicted right now. James himself has said he doesn't see himself as Tyler's dad anymore, and it took him a long time to come to terms with the fact that he wouldn't get to see him grow up or be a part of his life. I've pushed for years to try and form a relationship, and to James's credit, he lasted 6 months in contact with Bella. But ultimately, she said it didn't matter what he had done, that if he tried to come into Tyler's life, that she would turn him against James, so he gave up. I think honestly James feels like crap that this is probably another big thing that Tyler is missing out on. I truly don't think he has other motives, or at least I hope he doesn't. This whole situation is just so out of character for James. I'm honestly questioning myself and wonder if I just put something aside. Not the a-hole. It's your money, and you should do what you want with it. Seeing as this kid does not know that your husband is his father, and he is leading a good life, why should you give up your money for him? Plus, it's not your husband's money, so it's not for him to dictate who the money goes to. Very unfair of him to equate you to his ex for making life difficult, as that's an issue between them and them only, not your problem. 8 years ago, my ex-husband's sister, Kim, died unexpectedly. She and my daughter, age 14 then, were very close, and it was very hard on my daughter. I was newly divorced from my ex, and my new ex-mother-in-law gave me several new kitchen items, skillets, blender, electric griddle, that Kim had purchased in preparation for her upcoming wedding. I didn't need them, but I kept them, planning on giving them to my daughter when she got eventually moved out on her own. My daughter is now 21 and just got an apartment with her cousin. I want to give her the kitchen items, but my new husband, we've been married 5 years, is very offended that I don't want to give the items to his daughter, who lives with her mom but just turned 18 and wants to move into her own place. She never sees us and doesn't want much to do with us. She doesn't even like me. I can't think of one good reason why I should give those things to my stepdaughter, but my husband thinks the sun rises and sets on his kids and thinks these kitchen items should go to his daughter, who probably doesn't even want them, but is too concerned with looking like the grateful daughter to even say so. My daughter has a medical condition and related medical costs, and sometimes needs to cut back on her hours at work, so I feel like she might appreciate the monetary and sentimental value of the stuff. Not the a-hole. Your stepdaughter had no connection to your sister-in-law, and I'm sure ex-husband would have preferred them going to his daughter and not someone else's daughter. I, 20, have an 8-month-old daughter. It's just me and her because her dad didn't want anything to do with her. Fine by me. Currently, I have zero interest in dating. My dad wasn't exactly an active participant in my upbringing. He met my stepmother when I was 10, and they've since had my 2 brothers, one being only 2 months older than my daughter. I moved in with him because my mother couldn't handle a baby in the house. I'm currently doing my L3 apprenticeship in childcare. I work 35-hour weeks. Not long, but one of the settings is an hour walk, plus nearly hour bus ride. I don't mean one or the other, so total, nearly 2 hours. The other is an hour bus. I'm out usually 6:30 a.m. till 7 p.m. I pay rent, cook for everyone, and do chores. I pay my stepmother to babysit for me as she's a stay-at-home mom. However, in 2 months, my daughter will be able to start the nursery I work in. I know my stepmother has always wanted a daughter. Sometimes I do get jealous or upset how close she is to my daughter, as in sometimes she won't let me hold her, feed her, or walk her. She does apologize afterwards, says she gets anxious because how young I am. But I'm hoping if I suck it up, I'll be able to afford my own place in a year. My stepmother's sister visited, and I overheard. I don't know why. My dad referred to my daughter and his son as his and my stepmother's little babies. I waited till step-aunt left and reminded him that he didn't even want to be called granddad. He's not my baby's dad, nor is she mother. He said, sorry, with how often we look after them, sometimes it does feel like she's our daughter. He's been encouraging me to go to university. I didn't get my math. Doubt I'll get my functional math, so university is out of the question. But he mentioned how he'd be continuing to look after her shall I go to university. I said I wouldn't even bother trying to go to uni if he was going to cross a boundary. I did cry, and my stepmother said I was overreacting, and that I should be happy how close everyone is, how much they do for me, and sometimes people do form unconscious bonds and thoughts, and since they apologized, I shouldn't have manipulated them. Am I the a-hole? What the duck? She's really crossing the line and must respect some clear boundaries I don't even have to mention. The problem here isn't they sometimes feel like their grandkids are their own children, but actually trying to undermine your role as a parent. Your stepmom is a babysitter who's acting in highly inappropriate ways with your daughter. Withholding your child from you is especially scary, and your dad referring to your daughter as your stepmom's is also a cause for concern. I would be worried that they might try to use the police, legal system to take your daughter away from you, especially since your stepmom is already espousing concerns about you caring for your own daughter and implying that you're incapable or incompetent. Given all this together, I'd be seriously concerned about their motives. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Speaking from the viewpoint of a mom, there is one thing to form a bond, which is good. But there is another to refer to one's grandchild as one's child when it isn't, especially without your consent and knowledge. They are helping you out, and you are paying your stepmom to care for your child until she can go to the daycare you work at. But that doesn't mean she can hog your daughter from you when you come home and want to hold your baby. She is the a-hole for this and needs to stop right now. When your daughter can be at the daycare, try to find somewhere else to stay so this scenario is put to an end. They overstepped a boundary and then said you overreacted when you asked them to stop. That is not okay.